Congresswoman Harman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a long day for the witnesses and for others here who also have questions, so I'm going to try to stick within my time limits. As I was sitting here, it occurs to me that over a quarter of a century ago, I was Chief Counsel and Staff Director of a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee. At that time, there were very few women in staff positions on subcommittees. I think, if memory serves, there was no woman member of the United States Senate. There was a very able Senate staffer named Fred Thompson, who was extremely well known at the time in the Watergate investigation. But the things that we did were hard, but I don't think any of them as hard as pulling together all the facts that relate to the plot of 9/11. And I just want to say, as a matter of personal pride, as I sit here with Senator Feinstein and Congresswoman Pelosi watching Eleanor Hill perform, that this moment is a long time in coming, and I just commend her for her talent and dedication and for the amount of work she's been able to pull together for those of us who are part of this joint inquiry in a elegant and reasonably expeditious fashion. I am very proud of the work that you do, Eleanor. The purpose of this joint inquiry, as I have said many times and many others have said also, is to look backward for the purpose of looking forward, to bridge the gaps in intelligence capabilities and prevent the next attack. I am not as interested in the failures that happened pre-9/11 as I am interested in protecting, preventing, not having failures at a future time when we may be attacked again. That future time, according to Director Tenet, and I strongly agree, could be in the next hour, tomorrow morning, tonight. The sniper incidents in Washington show us how vulnerable we are to attack, and so do the recent events in Bali, Kuwait, and elsewhere. At any rate, the thrust of my questions is to go forward. Let me also add, as Senator Thompson did, that some of what needs to get done does not need to get done by the people at the witness table. It needs to get done by Congress. I think it is tragic that our fiscal year 2003 intelligence authorization bill has not been acted upon. It's held up because of a dispute about the precise powers of an independent commission. Those precise powers should have been agreed on long ago. Everyone supports the commission, and what's being held up in addition to the commission is an information sharing bill that passed the House 422 to 2 and has been introduced in the Senate. Funding for a wide variety of things, some of which are classified and some of which are public. That bill should be law. The same goes for the Homeland Security Department legislation, which we've all been discussing. Director Tenet talks about the back end. That bill is the back end. It's also some part of the front end because it would create an intelligence fusion center so that we get better at giving real-time information about the nature of threats to our first responders. If we don't get better about doing that, we're going to continue to be vulnerable. So I could go on about what we haven't done. Those are two big things that we haven't done. And yesterday, a bipartisan group from the House that were the original authors of the Homeland Security legislation held a press conference where we said, it's time for the Senate to act, to vote its will on whatever version of civil service the Senate wants to pass, and then for a conference to occur, the White House to buy in, and for us to get a bill signed. And I strongly believe that's true. But what I want to focus on for a few minutes today are things that are within your power, you the witnesses before us, to fix. And again, I'm not interested in why they were broken. I'm interested in how they get fixed. I think the fair question, and you can't answer it the way I'm going to put it, but you can answer it as I break it into parts, is this one. On 9/11, 19 hijackers boarded 4 planes at Logan, Dulles, and Newark and crashed them into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and a field in western Pennsylvania. Would those attacks be prevented today? Now, of course, you can't say yes or no, but what I'm going to ask you is probabilities. I want to know, based on all the things that you are fixing, and you documented them very carefully, what is the probability? How much improved is it over where you were in 9/11 that you could stop not necessarily those precise attacks, but major attacks targeted at the U.S. homeland? How much better are you at doing this than you were pre-9/11? And I'd like to ask General Hayden as well. General Hayden?
Thank you, ma'am. A couple of things have changed, and one thing fundamentally has changed. So let me begin with some of the perhaps less impactful changes. One is additional resources, and that's been very important. The committees here have given us additional monies that have been asked for by the President and some additional manpower. That helps a lot. You heard my reference earlier about transformation and chasing modern signals. That's good. We've also, the three of us and some others not at the table, have improved procedures, largely in the area of how quickly and agilely we share information. That's also been very valuable and has an impact. Now, let me tell you what I think the most impactful thing has been, and much has been made about the DCI's declaration of war against al-Qaeda in October of '98, and what did we do about it, and what difference did it make, and so on. Let me tell you a fundamental lesson I've learned. There's a big difference between George declaring war and al-Qaeda and America declaring war and al-Qaeda. The most fundamental difference between today and the circumstances that we existed under in the morning of the 11th, I used this metaphor before in closed session. Let me quickly review it. Prior to September 11th, the motto of your intelligence community was playing American football with the opposition on the 2-yard line, and it was forever first and goal. They would run a play, and our measure of merit would be if we stopped them from getting into the end zone on that particular play. And if we did, some metaphorical official would take the ball, put it back on the 2-yard line, and declare it to be 1st and 10 again. What has changed is that we are delaying, denying, disrupting, and destroying portions of the al-Qaeda network. Prior to September 11th, time was infinite for them. It was always on their side. They could take whatever steps they needed to take in order to be secure. They can no longer do that. Things are going bump in their night now, and that puts us at a great advantage. That's the big difference.
Thank you. Time is short, so I just would like just a very short answer from Director Tenet and Director Mueller, because I want to turn to something else. Probability. How much better are we?
You're a lot better, probability. You're a lot better. One, every morning there's a common threat matrix where law enforcement and intelligence data comes together in one place with actions that have been assigned, and everybody sees it, and it's disseminated broadly. Number two, some of the old classification rules have gone out the door. Orcon controls on HUMID, controls on his raw traffic, controls on his criminal files because of the Patriot Act. All of that is moving to people quicker than it has before. There's a speed with which this is all is happening in terms of the handoff between the disciplines. There's a greater awareness of what's going on in the country. I can't give you probability. Is it better than it was a year ago? It's a heck of a lot better. And I believe Governor Ridge has done a good job in his role in terms of trying to bring this process together. So, yes, we're better. Can I give you a guarantee? Absolutely not.
Right. Thank you. Director Tenet.
At the FBI, there are 4 things I'd say in areas in which we are substantially better. One, the shift in mission. I think there is an FBI employee, not just agents out there, who understand the necessity of pulling together pieces of information, and regardless of how innocuous they may seem, making certain that they are written up and pursued. Secondly, the Joint Terrorism Task Forces in all the 56 offices. That has greatly expanded our capabilities, not only by having additional agents assigned to counterterrorism, but by leveraging that with the assistance of the state and locals and providing a mechanism for information to come from state and local, as well as information going back to state and locals. Thirdly, in personnel, we have hired any number of over 100 analysts in what we call IOSs and another 143 of IRSs. Half of them approximately in both categories are still in the background process, but the others are on board and are doing that type of analysis. In terms of agents, we're putting 900 new agents through the academy, and we've reassigned approximately 500 to counterterrorism. And lastly, technology. Within the next, one of the deficiencies we had in exchange of information was not having a top-secret SCI network upon which we could shove or push to the analysts those classified documents and cables that we get from others outside as well as within our building. And that we have put together a LAN that is going to enable us to do that, and within the next 30 days it will go up, so it will complement the analytical capability we have in the form of analysts by giving them the basis for the sharing of the information within the organization as well as between us and the CIA.
So probability is what?
All I can tell you is we have, I think, certainly doubled our capability since last year, if not trebled.
Okay. New question. Senator Levin detailed the plot in his charts and talked about failures, most of which related to watch listing.
Yeah.
My first information about that came from a Newsweek article, June 10, 2002, which carefully documents this material as well. I'm not sure why I learned it from Newsweek first, but at any rate, that's where I learned it. My specific question is watch lists. Director Tenet, in your testimony on page 18, you detail all the changes you've made. What I think we need to know briefly is how will the new, and you deserve a sandwich. As one of the mothers on this committee, I think you deserve a sandwich. How will the new watch list system work? Will it pick up all the stuff we needed to pick it up, needed to pick up? Will it be one watch list? I assume it will be based on tip-off, the State Department system. Will it be run through a national watch list center or this terrorist identification classification system that Senators Feinstein and Wyden are proposing? Who will run it? Who will ensure that the information gets inputted? Who will have access to it? How will you make certain that the airlines are paying attention to this? Or the trains, or pick any number of things. I think the American people need to know not just that the watch list is being fixed, but precisely how it is going to be fixed, how it is going to be funded, how it won't disappoint us next time. And I don't know whether you can answer that question here, but I think it's very important for the combination of you, specifically the FBI and the CIA and maybe other agencies, but at least since you're the witnesses, to provide this committee specific information about what is changing and, better yet, what has already changed, so that people who happen to be at strange meetings in Malaysia definitely get watch listed when the first person who notices this notices it.
And I will do that with some detail for you, Ms. Harman.
Okay.
Well, I would say that it is being worked on by Homeland Security. It's yet another reason why the Homeland Security Department would be helpful. I will say I think both organizations have changed their procedures with regard to watch lists, consolidating in one. We have in the FBI consolidated in one unit the information that goes into TIPS or the tip-off system. We have established our own watch list that is tied into NCIC, which is a sub-department of NCIC. And the importance is not only having a consolidated watch list, but also reviewing that watch list to make certain that persons get off of it when they have been run through the system and come up clean. So individually, I think both of our institutions have changed their procedures to make certain that what happened before in September, prior to September 11th, does not happen again, but it still does not totally satisfy the necessity for having one location within the federal government to address that.
You remind me, Director Tenet, of my favorite rant about email. You push the button and you think people are supposed to know something and act on it, and sometimes they don't. The watch list cannot become a push-the-button exercise. It has to be an active, interactive exercise so that consequences flow from listing names. Last question. There's one member of the Tenet family who knows how to fix things. This is called Dare to Repair. I trust that, written by Stephanie Glackus Tenet, who is the repair person in the Tenet family. But I'm hoping...
She's fixing the watch list system.
Well, that makes, if you want to get the job done, put a woman in charge. So that makes me very happy.
She's clearly in charge.
I believe that. And at any rate, this is an introduction to my last question, which is the many people in your agencies who have been trying to fix things, the heroes and heroines pre-9/11 and post-9/11, not the big shots, the little shots, who have been doing extraordinary work. I have said from the beginning again that we had good people with inadequate tools, and I would like each of you to tell us one story about somebody that we won't know who had it right pre-9/11 and continues to do extraordinary work on behalf of the American people, because I think that is a message that doesn't get out enough. General Hayden?
I'd point to the folks in our counterterrorism shop, particularly those who are analyst linguists who have been working this problem for decades. The Army has a phrase: it takes 18 years to grow a battalion commander. It takes about that long for us to grow someone so knowledgeable about this target that it can take the language and the Quranic references and the indirection and the obscure of the conversation and turning it into something very useful for American intelligence. That's a life's work. You don't get that off the street. Those are the folks who looked at this, who looked on the scene on the morning of the 11th I referred to earlier. Not that they were responsible, but that they had a sense of responsibility. And that's why we had to tell them it's all right, get back to work. I'd single out those folks.
Director Tenet?
Well, Ms. Harman, I'm going to come back to this woman in the middle of the watch list, who's one of the finest employees that we've ever had employed out there, who starts her day early in the morning, sifts through hundreds of cables, passes operational leads, is as vehemently opposed to these people who are trying to kill us as anybody you've ever met in her life. She's a real hero in this story. And the notion that I'm going to take her out and shoot her is about the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, because of her passion and commitment to her job, and I don't want her for a minute to believe that I'm going to come after her or somebody's going to come after her because we overwhelmed her and didn't give her all the tools she needed. I mean, I'd like you all to meet her sometime.
But you're going to give her better tools now,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
And then she'll be accountable for a job that is a different job from the one she was asked to perform before.
I want to talk about the accountability is always important, okay? But we also need to be careful. There are people who are taking enormous risk, working at enormous pace, and we've all talked about risk aversion. We've all talked about what people will or will not do, so let's be careful. Because none of these people believed that they were doing anything but the best job they knew how to do. There was no intent to withhold information. There was no intent to lie, cheat, or steal. They did everything they knew how to do, and it wasn't flawless. If anybody's going to take responsibility, I take responsibility.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's part of leadership, is taking responsibility. But I also think, in line with some of Senator Levin's comments, that we need to give people good job descriptions, good tools, and then make certain that not just they try hard, which I am always for, but that they succeed in what I think is the most important endeavor that people are engaged in the federal government. Director Tenet?
I would pick an analyst also for the FBI who provided the following description of her day to me. She said, imagine for a moment that you've been given a jigsaw puzzle in a plain box. Inside are thousands of pieces, varying slightly in shape and color, but none give any indication of the picture that is to be formed from them. You have no picture on the box and do not know what the puzzle is supposed to look like. You are aware that the majority of the pieces don't even belong to this puzzle, but you are cautious in discarding pieces which could belong. The ones that do belong are not enough to complete the puzzle or even give more than a hint of the picture that they are meant to form. Now imagine that this is not a game but a matter of life and death, where every threat could be real, every speculation could have merit, every source report could stop an attack. In your 12, 14, 16-hour workday, try to determine which pieces belong to the puzzle and where they fit. What does the picture look like? Who are the players? What are the patterns? What are we missing, and how do we find it? Now try doing this with insufficient personnel and technology, which comes to your point, is we have to give them the personnel and the technology. You are overwhelmed with information, overburdened by caseloads, stymied by technology, and constrained by laws and policies. And you try to supplant resources with longer hours, missing more time with family and friends, celebrating yet another holiday season a day or a week late or not at all. All of this is done knowing that despite your commitment and your determination, the pieces simply may not be there for you to put together. It is done knowing that lives could be lost in one day. You watch in horror when your fellow Americans, as your worst nightmare is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I thank the hardworking employees of these agencies, and I wish them well and tell them that they have the security of America on their shoulders, and I wish even better wisdom for the people who have appeared before us today, and thank them for their testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.